have a modern legal immigration system so we can all be proud, and especially the people who immigrated the right way. I want you to feel that we're treating the people that are coming after you the same way that we treated you. Thank you. And if we can improve on it, that's also good.
Hi, earlier we were talking about the cutting the debt. And I want to talk about increasing revenues.
Thank you.
And so I don't know what your thoughts are for increasing revenues. How I see it is, if you cut spending, you are cutting somebody's jobs. If you cut benefits, you're cutting how much money they have in their pocket to spend at a business. And so when you make cuts, it ends up being...
But business is different than government.
Yeah.
You know, if you cut spending in government, you actually get more economic growth. So, but
yeah, I don't quite understand how that works. How do you get more economic growth?
actually, I can show you, and I'll let you ask your question. You see, go to the previous chart. Yeah. As you see, as we cut spending, you know, and I already explained this chart. Look at the corollary to that. Go to the next chart. Look at what happened to the unemployment rate. We actually started creating more jobs when we started cutting
But
spending.
isn't that because we cut funding for the long-term unemployed people? Why the unemployment rate dropped?
No, yeah, so they decided to actually go get a job, which is good.
How do you know they're not?
Yes.
How do you know that they're employed?
Because you can see it in the chart that actually the unemployment rate actually went down. But I want to let you finish your thought, so.
Okay, well, so I'm looking at ways to increase revenue, like you say, like the health savings accounts.
Correct.
I know people who have low incomes do not have extra discretionary money to put aside because their tax rate's so low, it doesn't give them any benefits to save any money. And so I see that we need to do something to help people who don't have very much money have more money to spend, and then that would increase revenue that we can tax.
That doesn't work.
No.
The giving people money, all you're doing is you're taking money out of one pocket and putting it in the other pocket. What you need is to create an economy that's more vibrant. So our economy has always taken care of the people that don't have money. Medicaid and other social service programs are for the people who don't have money. We have food stamps, we have all these different programs. What I want is the people that are working to actually get better jobs. And that's how you increase revenue. If I help you get a better job, and if you're making today, let's say $10 an hour, and tomorrow you're making $15 an hour, that's actually helping you and helping the economy because you're going to be taxed more because you're going to actually bring more revenues.
How do we get better jobs?
And that's a great question. There's a couple of things that we have to do. Number one, I think we need to reform the tax code. And this, you and I are probably going to agree on this. I don't think we should be charging higher tax rates. I actually think we should be reducing tax rates but getting rid of all the loopholes. Because guess what happens with the loopholes? Is the people who have money, who can afford the best accountants and the best lawyers, who can use all the loopholes, and they actually end up paying less in taxes. But if we actually get rid of all the loopholes and we charge everyone the same rate, you're not going to have all these companies that are actually getting away with not paying taxes. GE hates it every time I use this example, but I'm going to use it again as I used it in every town hall meeting. GE actually had record revenues the last 5 years, and they keep getting tax refunds. I think that's absolutely shameless. I think that if we had a lower tax rate, instead of the 35% tax rate that we have for corporations, if we brought it down to 15, you would have more competition, more companies staying in the United States, and then GE, instead of getting a bunch of tax refunds, they would actually be paying their 15% corporate rate, which to them, it would actually be a tax increase, because now they're getting money from the government. But overall, it would not be a tax increase, because what we would be doing is actually reducing everybody's rates and raising the revenues that come to the United States.
Once again, I'm going to have a name challenge. Last name is Suggs. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, My question is, what is your opinion on legalizing marijuana on a federal level? I'm not
Legalizing marijuana?
marijuana on the federal
Okay.
level, and I want to assure everybody I am not a pot smoker. I have never tried it, but I have been around a lot of young people who smoke it occasionally. They get caught, they get put in prison.
And you really have to turn around those young people, just bad joke, sorry.
And they have really, really bad records, which prevents them then to get a really good job. You know, some of them, lots of them are at the UI and they major in really, really good majors, and then they can't get a job because of their record. And all what they've done is they have smoked pot, they haven't murdered anybody, they didn't rob anybody, they just got caught. So I just want to know, what is your stand on it, to legalizing it? And I just want to hear your opinion. I'm not saying, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I just want to hear what is your opinion.
Great question. Actually, it's a really important issue that we're actually dealing with in our office. I was also a criminal defense lawyer before I was in Washington, D.C., and I've dealt with a lot of these kids who make a stupid mistake and then they have to live with that record for the rest of their lives. So I actually have sponsored legislation. Let me answer your question first and I'll tell you about the legislation. I am not for legalizing marijuana, just so you understand. But I do think we need to do something with the way we're punishing people, especially non-violent drug offenders. I think we're throwing too many people in prison for non-violent drug offenses. So I have actually sponsored a bill at the federal level that would reduce the mandatory minimums that we have right now. If people get caught with marijuana, they have mandatory minimums and they end up going to prison or other drugs when they don't commit violent offenses. They end up going to prison for a long period of time, and that affects their records, and like you said, it affects their future job prospects and all that stuff. So what we have done in the House and in the Senate, we have two co-sponsors. One is a left-wing Democrat, and the other one's a right-wing conservative Republican. That's what I call the wingnut coalition. So, and we are sponsoring both in the House and the Senate legislation that reforms the sentencing standards for low-level drug offenses. Now, the other thing that I would do, and I would like to see, I think marijuana possession should actually be a state-level crime, and should only be, I don't like all the federal laws that we have on criminalization of drugs. I'm not a big fan of the war on drugs. I think we should keep it at the state level and have most of that enforcement. Unless you're dealing with distribution, which is a different issue, I think we can actually have the state deal with that quite a bit. So I would personally prefer to see those things dealt with at the state level, and I definitely am opposed to any mandatory sentences. And when I was a criminal defense attorney, I was a big fan of the drug courts that we have here in the state of Idaho that actually help young people like that. If you're a first-time offender who just had a small amount of a drug, you actually can go through a diversion program in the drug courts, and it will prevent you from having those nasty criminal records, so that you can learn and when you can go through those programs, you're less likely to reoffend. Yeah.
The next question comes from Gail Jensen, followed by Dan Boston.
Hi, I noticed you praised the Hobby Lobby decision.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you would praise the decision by an employer to say deny coverage for vaccination due to religious objections. I'm concerned about how you would feel about that, and what is the difference and where would it stop? Where does this stop?
That's a good question. I don't know where the stop is, but I think if you have a religious objection, I think for the most part, I think that should be respected. I think Hobby Lobby, what people lost sight of, is that their starting salary is $15 an hour. They actually pay their employees pretty good money. They actually provide full coverage, except for, a few contraceptives. I think they should be praised for the work that they're doing and for the jobs that they're creating, and for the fact that they're actually, unlike many other companies, they're actually providing their employees coverage. I think that should be praised. I don't think that should be damned. I don't think that should be persecuted. They should be persecuted because they have chosen to have a moral objection to something that by paying their employees a pretty good salary, the employees could actually possibly pay for it themselves. And if they want additional coverage, they can actually get that additional coverage, and they're not being prevented from doing that. So I think we have to be really careful when we look at a company like Hobby Lobby that's actually employing hundreds of thousands of people and actually providing health care, which is what we would think every morally responsible company should be doing.
Dan Bossy is our next question, followed by Shirley Green.
Thank you, Congressman. On behalf of federal employees and from my National Association of Federal Employees, there's a big move underway in Washington, D.C. by the wealthy to change the CPI from the CPIW to the CPII, which will actually cost the retirees money every year. Every year is in effect. So that 10 years ago, I lost 10%, 6%, and 9% in between years. And what's your opinion of the CPI?
Okay. We talked about the budget, we talked about the debt, and we have to look at what's happening and some of the things that we're doing. Obviously, there's certain, we always promise federal employees that they're going to get certain benefits, but we haven't always promised what level of benefits they're going to get. And we got to look at reforming some of the things. Some of these numbers are getting really astronomical, and we're getting to the point that we don't have the money to pay. I don't necessarily have a position. I'm not an expert on the CPI issue, so I don't have a specific position. But I do think we need to reform even the way we do federal employee benefits. And we do need to be careful that we're protecting the people that are in retirement versus the people that are getting to retirement. But I am in favor of looking at all options. I don't know that I can specifically speak to the one example. Maybe we should get a little bit more information from you and talk about that. But thank you very much, and thank you for your service.
This is our last question from the list, and then after this question, we'll probably have time for two more from the audience. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Congressman, for coming back to Moscow. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
My heart, like many, is broken over what's going on with ISIS and the terrorists and what's happening in Syria, in Iraq, and in Israel. I guess that we are starting to do something that I guess I would like to know. What's your opinion? Can we do more? Can we help those poor people, Christians that are being persecuted and the children that are being beheaded?
Thank you. I was actually at the editorial board, and I've had to tell everyone the same thing. I haven't been fully briefed on the ISIS situation, so I'm trying to be really careful with my public comments on this, because I think it's pretty irresponsible for members of Congress to start talking about a situation before they understand all the facts, especially on something as critical as military intervention and military action. So I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to be very helpful right now, but we are hoping to get some briefings tomorrow, and then I'm going to try to get as much information as possible, because I think we're all concerned about this, but I'm also concerned about the men and women in the military and sending again people into an area after we've been at war for so long. So it's what I believe is probably my most important responsibility is to make a wise decision on the use of force and whether we're going to actually use our men and women in the military and send them into a place for hostility. So I'm not going to be able to say much about this right now, but I'm trying to get as much information as possible. So thank you for the question. We have two more questions. So.
Congressman, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Enjoyed it so far tonight.
Thank you.
My question deals with the Second Amendment, which of course is a lot. I'm a gun owner. I believe in the Second Amendment. My concern is basically not in Idaho, but I have 3 daughters that live in Denver. Both my grandkids live in Denver, and we went to a giant mall there in Denver one time. And what concerns me is the sale of fully automatic weapons with 50-round magazines that people can purchase and then walk out onto the street. And as I was walking down the mall with my 3 children, my son-in-law and my grandchildren, I thought, my God, if somebody walked in here with a fully automatic machine gun, they could do tremendous amount of damage. Now, once again, I support the Second Amendment. I own guns. But what is your opinion about selling fully automatic weapons with these huge rounds of ammunition to the public?
My understanding, I hope I'm not wrong about this, but fully automatic weapons are already banned. So we don't have fully automatic weapons. We have semi-automatic weapons. No, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I have no problem with the guns that are being sold, but actually going back to the mental health question, that's one of the things that Tim Murphy's bill deals with is violence, is who these guns are getting into the hands of. And that's why I'm kind of looking at that legislation. We need to deal with mental health issues. We need to know that in most of the states where some of these incidents are happening are actually where you have the strictest gun control. Some of these things are happening in buildings where actually weapons are not allowed. So gun control is not necessarily working in those states where this is happening. But I do think my main concern is the mental health component of it. That if you look at some of the kids and some of the incidents that we've had with some of these semi-automatic weapons, it's actually people who went out there, they either borrowed it from their family or even in some cases purchased it themselves, and the system did not catch that they had a mental health issue. So I think we really need to look closely at that. But I'm not preventing any more weapons. So, thank you. And one more question. Going to the highest bidder. No,
Okay, if,
no, you already asked the question.
What are you most looking forward to working on in the coming year?
Wow, I think my first answer, my last answer probably going to be, I really enjoy working on immigration reform. I think you look at an issue that has been intractable for 30 years, that we haven't been able to find the solution. It's like a puzzle for me. I'm trying to find the right way to deal with this so we can actually make Americans proud. We can actually protect our borders. We can actually have an immigration system that works. All those things I'm really excited about. The other thing that I'm doing is a little bit more, the 30,000 foot level. We're working really hard, a group of conservative Republicans, working really hard to have a pro-growth agenda. I think the lady who asked the question about revenues, you're absolutely right. We can't cut our way out of the mess that we're in. We actually have to grow our way out of the mess that we're in. And I think sometimes Republicans talk too much about what they're against. We need to start talking more about what we're for. We need to start talking about the positive message, the 4 or 5 things that we would do if we have a president at the White House, if we have a Senate that we can work with, and why those things are going to be so important to you as an individual. The other thing that Republicans don't do very well, we talk about big business or we talk about business owners. I always joke in Washington, D.C. that I had never heard the phrase job creators until I started hanging out with Republicans in Washington, D.C. Nobody talks about job creators. Everybody talks about their own personal life and how the policies affect them individually. And we're working on a message of hope, of opportunity, of growth that can actually help people feel inspired. And I'll finish with this. Like I told you about my mother, she was a strong JFK Democrat, but we moved to the mainland in 1981. And if you remember, that's when Ronald Reagan was president of the United States. She was a proud Democrat who decided to register as a Republican. Not because Ronald Reagan was talking about job creators or about businesses. He was talking about individuals and about how his policies were going to help America be better, stronger, and wiser. And I hope that the Republican Party and people like myself can actually send a message of hope and opportunity so people can be inspired once again. Thank you very much, God bless.